Welcome to Gold Silver Pros.
Everybody, this is Rob Keens with www.goldsilverpros.com. Welcome to the program. This is the second part in a series of central bank digital currencies, which I've been promising, and this will conclude this part of the central bank digital currency series for this year. It is Thursday, December 21st, 2023. We're going to go in this presentation. We're going to do a real quick refresher on what we had last Thursday on the 14th. We're going to go over the projects we covered there, the projects we didn't cover very, very briefly. Then I'm going to get into two more projects, which are going to explain the end game. And then I'm going to talk about the end game of the system, how it's going to work, and what it's really for. This video, I think, is going to be the one probably it draws the most attention out of the two in the series, because we're going to talk about the end game, which I think will be very interesting to people. But we got a little bit of work to do before we get there, a little bit more homework, a little bit more academic work before we can get to those conclusions. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you a solution to this problem that I'm currently involved in, and that a lot of you have heard about, or maybe haven't heard about, and we'll introduce it to you. That could be the cure to this system, could be the free alternative to preventing the system from being put into place. And I think you'll see as we go through the presentation on central bank digital currencies why the individual may not want this to be put in place, or may have some concerns over implementation of central bank digital currencies, specifically worldwide, and specifically as they operate together into this system. And there are a couple of stages of that system that we'll go through. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So up on the screen is the presentation called Central Bank Digital Currencies, CBDCs, the Ultimate Goals. Again, this is part two. Let's take a brief look at what part one was. Video one in this series, broadcast last Thursday, covered the following items. It was basically the basic infrastructure of the central bank digital currency system, the plumbing, if you will. It covered integration and the interoperability, or the interplay, or the trade of central bank digital currencies with each other. We focused on three projects with some additional information outside those. We focused on Project Icebreaker, which talked about cross-border retail central bank digital currencies. And remember, in the new central bank digital currency system, there are wholesale currencies, wholesale CBDCs for trade between the big banks, the central banks, for big time settlement, not for retail purposes, you buying something at the store, but for the banks to settle up at the end of the day. You had Project Dunbar, which talked about multiple central bank digital currencies operating at the same time. In other words, we now have a network of all central bank digital currencies in an ecosystem trading freely at the same time, and everybody being able to trade all of the others. Okay, this is an advancement on the current system in which the currency pairs, the fiat currency pairs, have to be traded a certain way. Not every bank may be able to trade the others. It's sort of a hodgepodge, glued together system. This is a much more advanced system for all of the central bank digital currencies in every jurisdiction, every country, if you will, to play together at the same time. And I'm going to show you some projects that we didn't cover that are going to make that possible. A lot of you have written me or have said, or other influencers on videos or news articles where this is not possible. I'm going to show you where it's possible. And then there's Project Enbridge we covered last week, which was testing the cross-border wholesale central bank digital currencies. So not only have they developed the model for the two tiers, the retail, us, and the wholesale for the banks, central bank digital currencies, but they've tested how they would work, and they've tested how a central bank can distribute central bank digital currencies, amongst each other. They've talked about how commercial banks can trade them with central banks, and how they can trade them with commercial banks within the jurisdiction and cross-border to another country or jurisdiction, even in different currencies. And they tested how all this can be done all at the same time. Okay, are you getting that? That's why I focused on those three for that first presentation. Moving on to the additional projects. These are ones in which, if you want to do some homework and you want to know what else they're doing, these are the ones you want to go over. And I put these in a separate slide and didn't cover them in detail, because really this is meant to answer objections. So you say, well, they can't implement the system because X, Y, and Z. Well, they have a project for it, I guarantee you. And so we're going to go over that real quickly, and just going to summarize these real quickly. And then we're going to get into the final two projects, or the final two pieces to put this whole thing into place. And then I'm going to tell you what I think it really is. And man, I'm telling you, you want to stay for that part of it. All right, so the additional projects, which are homework for you to go and understand, like if you're some of these people that have an IT background or technical background, and you're emailing me, say, I don't say how they can do this, or how are they going to do this, or how does this work? that's for you. This slide's for you. This slide is for you if you're curious and you're like, from a functional perspective, maybe you're a finance person or an economics person, you're like, well, they can't do this. This will never work. Or you're just one of those that says, I don't think the various governments of the world are going to be able to agree on anything. Well, guess what? They got a project for it. Okay. They've thought of all possibilities, or at least the big ones, and there's a project for it. Let's go over them. Project Mariana is the automatic settlement of foreign exchange. So if you go back to last week in Project Dunbar, and there was a video about how, they could, let's go back to that slide on Dunbar. Dunbar was multi-CBDC interoperability. So in other words, this is where exchange rates come in, because you can have the digital yuan, the digital dollar, the digital Aussie, the digital pound, whatever, digital whatever, okay? The digital version of whatever currency is out there now. And this is how you can sell it. You still have foreign exchange, in other words. So the system isn't doing away in this step with different currencies and foreign exchange rates. It's still there. You're still trading currency pairs, but not trading pairs. You're trading all currencies against one another. This is an advancement of the old system, and Project Mariana explored how, on top of Project Dunbar, or in conjunction with Project Dunbar, how you could integrate foreign exchange rates into the system, but do it in an automated fashion, so that you don't have all of the inefficiencies of the current system. You take away some of the arbitrage, because the system automatically is figuring all this stuff out. So it makes everything more smooth. Let's say I'm sending to Singapore US dollars, and Singapore sending back their, dollars, their currency. The system automatically figures out how to optimize that, price in the foreign exchange rates. You don't got to do it. So you can be sitting here on your phone, on your app, I need to send, US dollars, and have somebody figure out Singapore dollars and get that so I can get my product, and have the system figure it out where I don't have to go through a broker or anything. And you can do it from your phone. That's Project Mariana. Project Atlas, that's cross-border flows of crypto assets. Crypto assets. If you had lived in the cryptocurrency, or the private cryptocurrency realm, you know what a crypto asset is. Well, guess what? They have crypto assets in the central bank digital currency system as well, mimicking what is in the private digital currencies like Ethereum and Monero and Litecoin and Bitcoin, all that kind of stuff. Yes, there's assets, crypto assets. Think something analogous to like an NFT, or something like that. Guess what? That's in this system too. Lest you think that they don't have a way to do that, why would they put that into this system? There are about 1,000 use cases, but ultimately, I think it's because they want to do away with the private cryptos. They don't want you to have Bitcoin or Ethereum or use, private NFTs or anything like that. They want everything inclusive in the system, but there are reasons why you would have it. This video is not for that, but just know that they have a project for it. Project Fuse. This one's very interesting. A lot of people have said, well, the banking system is different. Yes, they have a smart contract type infrastructure in the central bank digital currency system, which allows jurisdictions, countries that don't have the advanced tech stack, that don't have the technology we need, the financial technology they need to directly participate in the system, to use it anyway. And it's basically like a middleware, or it's really like a module that interfaces with the central bank digital currency system, but will take your existing system. So your existing system could be 50 years old, but as long as you can send electronic transactions, this module you put on top of it will allow you to participate in the system. So they don't have to modernize all existing financial technology for this system to be put in every jurisdiction in the world, as long as you can plug a computer in and you have some level of technology within, reasonable limits. So in other words, they don't have to do all of the back end work to get all these systems compliant to be able to use the system. That could take 20, 30 years. And I'll get into how long I think that's going to take here in a moment. I think they want this system in place now, because from a cultural phenomenon perspective, they want everybody going, oh, electronic currency, ooh, no cash. Retail central bank digital currencies, the banks to use the wholesale ones before they get everything built. So what they did was they just built a connecting layer. So you don't have to be updated. And if the US systems are slightly different than the UK system, slightly different than Chinese and Russian, it's okay. They got a project for it. That's Project Fuse. But Project Fuse is also, well, it's another project actually, but Project Fuse is to take those differences and to get everybody on the same system. But they got time to do that. It allows them to implement the system without giving everybody on the same tech and on the same systems. Okay, just know that. Then there's Project Polaris. It's the offline retail payment infrastructure and resiliency. So let's say cyber attack, all those who say, well, If they cut the power, the system falls. No, that's Project Polaris. If somebody cyber attack, no, that's Project Polaris. If one of the banks goes, the participating banks goes down and we don't have enough nodes verified, no, that's Project Polaris. In other words, Project Polaris is sort of analogous to the Lightning Network for Bitcoin. For those who know, if you don't know, don't worry about it. But the Lightning Network for Bitcoin was to do a couple of things in essence, in simplified terms. Lightning Network was to, one, handle more microtransactions and then settle at one point on the blockchain. So think about, you walk into your bank and they do a bunch of transactions with their cash till every day. And at the end of the day, they go settle up with the Fed. Okay, that's sort of Lightning Network for Bitcoin. It allows you to do more microtransactions and then settle up at the end of the day. And it was to allow, Lightning Network was to provide resiliency if the network was down and other things like that. I mean, there are lots of reasons for Lightning. So Project Polaris is sort of like Lightning. It's analogous to, not exactly like Lightning for Bitcoin, but for the central bank digital system. So you could, even if the grid went down, but you had a phone, you could buy stuff. You could walk in to an outlet and buy something, and then Project Polaris will help it get settled up. So if there's a cyber attack or the power goes out, the grid goes down, there's an internet issue, this system still works. So for those of you who thought, well, all God do is pull the plug, no, they got a project for it. Project Mandala. There are different policies and regulations, accounting regulations, laws, processes, procedures, all that kind of stuff in every different country. And that's caused the system right now to be bogged down and a bunch of intermediaries to be involved to try to figure all that out. And it gets very expensive. And that's why the system is slow and inefficient. When you consider global trade, from a global trade perspective, we need to be faster. That's what they think. And I would agree with that part of it. So Project Mandala is to, the system takes all of that, digitizes all that knowledge, and the system, using AI, figures out how to make it all work. And as you change your regulations and your laws, which is always occurring all the time in each jurisdiction, it takes all that into account, and it still allows you to settle. So it solves a lot of the problems that people have right now with settling contracts and monetary payments, and all the regulations around that, whether it be money laundering or how the payments get paid, or, what type of payments and when, settlement procedures and dates, and are you going to the central bank for this? Are you going to commercial bank for this? And what currency? All that stuff is built in. That's Project Mandala. And then Project Pixtrial is stablecoins. Why stablecoins? Well, you'll see later on where you need something to anchor the system. Hint, hint, metal. Stablecoins and private currencies are there to provide an anchor to the private digital currencies. Well, they've got stablecoins in the central bank digital currency model. And I'll get to that when we get to one of the very last slides, why that's important. Now, it's interesting. These are all listed at the BIS Innovation Hub's website. So you go to BIS Innovation Hub, Google it, and you'll see all the projects I talked about here, the three main ones, and all these supplemental ones I just gave you a real quick briefing on at the BIS Innovation Hub. And there's one more I'm going to talk about that's at the BIS Innovation Hub, and then there's one that's not there. And that one that's not there is where you get to the real end game, and we're going to talk about that. But thankful to the my subscribers and viewers that have sent me information to help me put this all together. That last project, while it's not on the BIS's website, was sent to me by someone who's just been researching and came across something. And thank you to all the people that have helped contribute to make this possible. I certainly didn't figure the whole thing out on my own. And I had people supporting me, and thank you so much for doing that. All right, on. So what's our focus today? We're already 13 minutes in the video, and I'm finally getting to our focus today. But I wanted to cover what we did last week, give a summary of that, and talk about pieces I didn't talk about to answer objections. For all the people that think, well, I can't do that now for whatever reason. Yes, they can, and they are, and that means you're out of time. You're out of time. Whatever you thought was going to make this either not work or take 20 years, they can do it pretty darn quick. They're getting really close to the system being put in place. And the next iteration of the system, which is even, I think, let's say, less conducive to freedom. Okay. So our focus today is on two projects. That's on Project Orum, which is at the BIS website, and the Unit Foundation, which is on its own website and apparently not connected. But when you look at it, you know it's connected. Trust me. So the discussion is going to be next steps for the central banks, the threat to liberty, and risk, consequences, and cures, as I promised in the last video. I promised we would cover all these things. So here we go on the next one. Project Arum. You can, BIS Innovation Hub, you can get there. And this picture of old, I think it's old Roman gold, if I believe, I'll have to look it up, is, so in any case, on Project Arum, they've got a picture of gold, and for, I think for two reasons. One, you put gold on there to make people think of gold, to think that, oh, this is all going to be based on something we all trust. But also, I think this ties directly into gold, and we'll see that on the next project. I'm going to talk about how gold will be a part of the system. Now, going back to previous videos, and why I said this video is related to all my other videos on currencies and gold. When we did probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, a big series on Basel III and the Bank for International Settlements, the same one they're doing these projects, and using gold as a high quality liquid asset, HQLA, and Basel III requirements for the banks, and why you saw central banks buying gold since 2011 like mad. They're recapitalizing their system partly on gold, and we're going to show you exactly how they're doing that in the next project. Well, Project Arum is, it's listed as an infrastructure project, but really more than that, it's tying all of the central bank digital currency to gold. Now, let me just go explain. So here is a quote from Project Arum page on the BIS website. Arum, quote, Arum is a retail CBDC technology prototype comprised of a wholesale interbank system and a retail e-wallet system. Remember, you have wholesale central bank digital currencies and retail. Wholesale's for central bank settlement. Retail is for everybody else. Okay, they have to have those two tiers to control that system. This sets up two different types of tokens, according to the website. Intermediated CBDC, that's what we talked about last time, where there's no stable coin. It's just different central bank digital currencies trading with each other. That's intermediated. It means you have all these parties in the middle making sure everything's working, and technology. That's all that means. And then stable coins. Oh, that's a new concept, stable coins. What's a stable coin in the private crypto world? It's a coin backed by something, typically US dollars or some other, stuff. Could be gold, but most often it's something else. Well, in this case, it's actually going to be gold. I'm going to show you. So they're going to do a stable coin backed on gold. And it's what they're saying, backed by CBDC in the interbank system, but ultimately backed by gold because the central banks are holding gold as one of those assets. Other things as well, other currencies. So while intermediate CBDC is a direct liability of the central bank, the intermediate CBDC means just the central bank digital currency itself. The central bank is liable for that because they issue it. While regular wholesale CBDCs, are liabilities of the central bank, the CBDC-backed stablecoins are liabilities of the issuing bank, so the commercial banks with backing assets held by the central bank. So in other words, think about the Fed system where banks are depositing money to the Fed, and the Fed, is using those assets. Think of the repo market. Think of those types of things where you put an asset in there and you get credit with the Fed, however all that plumbing works. That's what a stable coin is. The backing assets are held by the central bank. So the banks put something into the central bank digital currency or the central bank system, and they get central bank digital currency issued to them. So it's like a collateral-based system. And the prototype is designed under the principles of safety, flexibility, and privacy. So in other words, they ultimately realized they needed something to back the system up. If they just went straight digital currency right out of the gate, they wouldn't see adoption, they wouldn't see support, the system could collapse. So they're putting a certain amount of gold into this system and other things like other currencies to stabilize it, and that's where the stable coins come in. That's all you need to know. The stable coins is an anchor to things that they perceive of real value, all defined in Basel III. Remember when I did the Basel III series and I said gold's in there, stock of other banks is in there, and currencies is in there. Well, guess what the stable coins are going to be built on? The things that are in Basel III. That's how it's connected. So Basel III is a precursor or a prerequisite or something that had to be set up before they got to central bank digital currencies. So when we talk about when Basel III was first conceptualized in 2012 and put into practice in 2014, and then the IMF paper came out in 2015 around electronic money, and then the development of the concept of central bank digital currencies, all this stuff's been put into place for over 10 years publicly, and probably talked about for about 20 behind closed doors. And that's how all of these things I've been talking about on the program are all connected. We're starting to see the end result of all of those things, all of those maneuvers in the system, all of those projects, all of those standards, all the things I talk about that a lot of people don't want to listen to, except for on my channel, you guys do, but that are so important. And that's why all the stuff that I've covered today is so important, understanding the system now. It is so important. So you guys have been with me for years who have followed this. We're getting to the end game. We're getting to what you really wanted to know. All that stuff leading up to now was building. All right. Continued. Here are the core principles of Project Orum. Safety. The wholesale interbank system can detect and prevent banks from, one, over issuance of retail CBDCs and wholesale CBDCs, double issuance using the same CBDC asset to issue retail repeatedly, or double redemption using the same retail CBDCs to exchange for wholesale. So wholesale is the base currency, retail is the offshoot. So they don't want you taking that same like dollar bill, digital dollar bill, and getting multiple credits for wholesale CBDC. They don't want people issuing multiple retail units off a single wholesale CBDC, and they don't want more retail CBDC than the whole than what's backed by the wholesale CBDC. So this is integrity and safety of that currency system, so that unlike a dollar or a gold-backed dollar standard, they don't overprint the dollars, if you will. And essentially, they're building it like we don't want to overprint, which in digital currency it doesn't really matter. They can just issue more, but they want the transactions to match one for one to have integrity. Why? Because they want the system to last. It's not good for us that that system has this integrity. That's why they put it in there. So users can still prove ownership of the retail CBDC. So what it does do, if you're a retail holder of these digital dollars or digital yuan or whatever, it's going to guarantee that that's your money. Now, that money may not be worth what you think it is. That's the real risk. But they're going to make sure that there's not counterfeit in the system. And the system achieves increased cyber resilience through decoupling between the wholesale, interbank, and the retail e-wallet system. There's a separation to where cyber attackers couldn't get in and muck up the whole system. They're compartmentalizing. And being a former cyber guy, that actually is a good attribute of any monetary or other financial system. So flexibility, the ARM system can be adopted under different CBDC models. Intermediate CBDC, that's just CBDC to CBDC trade, or stablecoin, in which CBDC is backed with something, okay, to give it integrity. Because people aren't just going to trust central digital currencies out of the gate. No one is. And that's where the stable coins come in. And that's where the backing by gold and other assets comes in. It controls the amount of information disclosed by the e-wallet system. So by separating those two and by having integrity on the two separate chains, digital ledger technology chains, you can ensure that there is some privacy at the individual level, although the authorities can still see what you're doing. But the other, like I could send money to and from the system and my neighbor wouldn't know, essentially is what that means. It's protecting the people from the people, not the people from the owners of the system, if that makes sense. Privacy, retail transactions are not disclosed the whole interbank system, but they can be looked at a centralized level. There's a project for that. It's on the BIS's webpage. I didn't put that project on the second slide, but it's there. Go look at the BIS's webpage. And then users, cryptographic secrecy, if you will. In other words, making sure the system has integrity by making sure the individual transactions can't be hacked or seen, or the encryption broken, if you will. And again, this sounds good if you're a retail user. But what it really means is the people running the system can see everything, just your neighbor can't, if you will. That makes sense. So here's a diagram and the tech stack. Not super important except for my IT people. I'm going to throw it up there for a second. But I'm going to talk about other stuff. So if you want to look at the flow diagram, great, it's there. I just put it there to note the system exists. It has resiliency. One bank can go down, the others, that's the cool thing about digital ledger technology and the blockchain, if you will, is that one node can go down and the others can be up, and you've got resiliency. So it's not like, in the old days where a bank goes down, whether it closes or power goes out or the ATM stopped working and you're screwed. In this system, actually, each node has a copy of what's going on. And so if one node goes down, it's actually more resilient from cyber attack, power outage, temporary closure of something, server maintenance, whatever the case may be, or individual banking issues, if that makes sense. The system does make sure that you have access to your money, but it also means you have no privacy and no way to get out of that system. Aha. All right, moving on. The last project we're going to talk about today, and the one that's really going to tie this all together, and this is not on the BIS website. This was a find by one of my subscribers, unitfoundation.org. And listen to two quotes from the webpage. The unit fractal monetary system, ecosystem. Okay. remember when I talked about fractals a couple of weeks ago, one of my subscribers said, talk about fractals. And we use fractals to show where the gold and silver price could go in a fractal system. And fractals are not linear. They're more akin to exponential, meaning, you know, the example I use is in nature. You could have a spiral mathematical pattern in a small mollusk. You could have it in a bigger hurricane, and you could have it in a galaxy or the universe. So there are mathematical concepts that can exist at the microscopic level, at the atomic level, that scale all the way up to the universal level. And this is, in fact, fractal is a mathematical representation of how the universe actually works, from the micro level to the macro, small to big. Well, guess what? They're putting that in the monetary system because they realize to have control, you don't want hyperinflations and blowups. And so the Unit Foundation is building a system that is not impervious, but very resilient to hyperinflations. And I'm going to kind of explain how that works. But using the concept of fractals, the system can grow no matter how big it needs to grow. Why? It's electronic. Yeah, there's maybe some gold backing, stablecoin backing, but ultimately Unit Foundation is to get off of stablecoins, get off of commodities, get off of gold and silver, and put us into a one world currency that can expand or contract whenever they need it to without breaking the system. Does that make sense? So that they have full control at all times. You don't have hyperinflations or big crashes in the system. It can scale up or down, but it has no tie to nature, natural money, that type of thing. And who's going to pay for all that? Well, it's going to be the individual, of course, through devaluation of money, devaluation, like whatever the case may be. Okay, but remember the discussion I had on fractals weeks ago about how the value of gold can go up or down, or any value can relatively go up and down in a system depending on what the system needs. That's what fractals explains, where they're using that in money. And this is an extremely powerful concept that could lead to electronic money that can never hyperinflate, never be extinguished, and by its nature, never allow you out of that system. All right, going back to the quote. The unit fractal monetary ecosystem introduces a practical approach to creating essentially apolitical money. Worldwide currency. Apolitical money, what does that mean? We don't care if you're in China or the US. It works everywhere. What is that? It's worldwide currency. That's all it is. Okay, back to the quote. They can be freely used as a storage of value or currency for payments via any open payment and clearing system. So what are they doing right now with some of those projects? Project Fuse, Project Polaris. One, they're making the system agnostic to the current banking system by building a connection layer. And two, they're going to bring everybody up to the same standard with Project Fuse. That's the step one, is what they're doing now. Unitfoundation.org is saying, let's use a fractal system to even build around that and say, we don't even care where you are, we want global money, and it can go across any system, while providing long-term purchasing power stability. The unit ecosystem is proposed as a solution to the basic lack of trust problem stemming from the politicization of the use of a single global currency and constraints on its use for valuation and settlement of trade and capital flows. In other words, we don't want another dollar-based system, because if we have another dominant single currency system, the rest of the world will never agree. China and Russia will never agree to this. Japan will never agree. Zimbabwe will never agree. But if we can get it to where there's one global currency, you can have your individual retail currencies, but we want one global currency to unite them all, one ring to unite them all, one global currency to unite the world. You do it using a fractal ecosystem, agnostic of individual political boundaries and individual currencies, that holds its value and doesn't allow any one political military regime to control the rest of the world, or economic system to control the rest of the world. So on its face, it looks, oh, that's wonderful. It gets rid of any single currency system that had been the problem plaguing civilization the past, thousands of years. And it would just equalize everybody. Yes, but if you equalize everybody, you take away everybody's what? Sovereignty, privacy, and control. That's ultimately what this is. All right, second paragraph. We introduced a fractal monetary framework which allows global financial system to function without directly using any national currencies for international trade and reserves. This is the end game. This is after the step I just told you. Arum and all those other projects are to get everybody on board with central bank digital currencies, and we'll figure out the back end later. And they'll get there on the technology side. Unit Foundation is essentially to make it to where none of that even matters, and we go to a true global centralized digital currency. The unit is designed to serve as a convenient and stable global currency alternative within the existing infrastructure. It's expected to be more resilient than any national currency to political exigencies of the day. So you guys can go to war as much as you want, but you're not going to break the global financial system. You guys can issue as much universal healthcare as you want without breaking the system. You guys can F up your debt markets without screwing the system. This system will be in place forever and ever and ever. It's designed to be an ever and ever system. And within that system, we'll absorb the current. How do they do that? Well, 40% of this is backed by gold. Let's go to how it works. 40% gold. That's where the stable coins come in. Project Orum comes in. If you understand Project Orum is to allow the unit framework to work. You're putting 40% gold in the system, 60% other currencies. No one currency could dominate more than 30%, I believe, of transactions, if I remember correctly. And they can move that up and down because it's a blockchain-based thing. You can change the rules as you need, but essentially it keeps the system, any one political regime from breaking the system. So it takes away the excuse of any president or prime minister or cabinet or Congress not to adopt the system. They're making it to where no one can say no, but they're backing with gold. And gold is held in independent jurisdictions. It's on the blockchain in terms of accounting, but it's stored physically and audited. And that system provides integrity. If any one currency goes to break, it won't break the system. It'll just be devalued by the system. Other currencies will take over. And that keeps any one currency from breaking the system. They transition away from commodity or even traditional currency money. And here's a quote. After an initial period, the market value of unit tokens is expected to become primarily a function of supply and demand, not of the value of the basket. In other words, the end game of unit foundation, or the unit currency, is to get rid of all commodity-based money, but all sovereign currencies across the world, because it's not the value of the underlying basket that matters. Eventually, because they believe, much like Bitcoin people believe, that the value in Bitcoin is the currency itself. It's the ease of use. It's the value to the system because it facilitates all this transactions and all this kind of stuff, makes it easier. That's the value. That's what Unit's proposing. They're proposing a one Bitcoin model for the world, but it's not a Bitcoin private currency that we have control over. It's that they have control over. Unit enhances sovereignty of individual states who no longer need to rely on other countries' domestic currencies for trade. In other words, it gets rid of us, of Sweden having to hold dollars and us having to hold yuan, because that currency will basically get rid of foreign exchange. And that's why I said eventually get rid of the individual currencies, because you don't need to rely on them anymore. If you don't need to rely on them, why do you need them? And foreign exchange reserves and can pursue independent domestic monetary policies focused on growth and stability while retaining complete exchange rate and interest rate control. Well, that is I don't believe that, because if it didn't matter, if the individual currencies didn't matter, you wouldn't need them. So I think this is a cover for we want to go to one global currency, in my opinion. The new unit tokens can be minted at the unit node without the need for central emitting authority, meaning eventually we want to get rid of the central banks, because if you don't need central banks if you don't need to emit your own currency. So eventually this will do away with even the central bank model, but they don't want to say that right now because China may not agree to that. The US may not agree to that. They're talking 20 years down the line, implementing this next step where you have the one global currency. Because think about it. It takes about a generation to get people used to new currency systems. So you run the existing central bank digital currency system for about 20 years to about 2045, 2050, and then you implement the unit system. The technology will be there. That's project. That's one of the projects we talked about. Fuse, and people will so be used to digital currency, you won't get any pushback. So they have to do it in stages, and that's what I've talked about for years with digital currencies. They got to do it in stages. You got to do stages in 20 years. Bitcoin's been out about 15 years. Getting to the point where people are going to accept digital currency, it's about 20 years. So that's coming 4 to 5 years. That's why I think the 3 to 4 year window from now to get central bank digital currencies is in place with acceptance of digital currencies in and of itself for the last 20 years. And then about 20 more years from about 2028 to 2030, 2050 to get a worldwide global currency in place, because people have already accepted digital currencies. And eventually they can say, well, why do I care if it's digital dollar or digital yuan? We're all trading with each other anyway. We're all one big global community. And we're all worried about global warming and all that stuff. So let's just all do the same thing. And that's what this is, in my opinion. So what are the consequences, the end game? And we're going to finish up pretty quickly here because we spent about almost 35 minutes talking about the system and another 35 minutes and last. So we've been over an hour, maybe an hour and a half on the last two presentations. So let's get to the end game. My view, this is to move quickly to centrally control digital currencies while temporarily circumventing differences in political jurisdictions and monetary authorities. That's the stage we're in now. Get monetary and policy aligned on the back ends technologically and culturally and politically in the next 20 years. And by about 2045, 2050, begin the second phase implementation of a single global currency replacement, irrespective of national cultures, political systems, or laws. Monitor and transactions and police behavior and build a monitoring and compliance regime around that at the international level, taking away local and state sovereignty. And implement social credit systems to control behavior of the populace to where the central global authorities want it to be. They can better do that when they control the currency, and they can link that currency digitally to your social media, to whatever you say, to all your transactions, sort of like the Chinese system that's in place now. And the Chinese system works. Ask the Chinese. What are the risks? Well, there's risk to the system and there's risk to the people. Let's talk about risk to the system first. If they do it too quick or they don't get agreement, you have non-participating countries, cultures, banking systems, or political regimes. That's a threat to that system being implemented. And the people realizing what this is and objecting and protesting on the individual level, that's a threat to the system. What's a threat to the people? Lack of privacy, lack of freedom, lack of wealth generation over time, and a new sort of indentured servitude model where they control everything. So ultimately you have to do what they say. It becomes your new employer. Because when you control the money, you control the people, you control behavior, you control everything. So the international banking system would be your new employer. You would essentially work for them in everything that you do. That's the risk to us. The cures. How do we stop, get out, not participate in the system? Well, first starts with educating yourself. So watching this video is first step. And anyone else that will listen, if they're not listening, move on. We talked about this on Spaces on Monday this week. Moving on. When people aren't listening, just move on. Don't try to talk to your brother-in-law if he's not going to listen at Christmas. Just don't worry about it. Move to the people that will, because you just need a strong and vocal minority to resist this kind of stuff. That's been true throughout history, not only in the U.S. with the revolution, but across every society and culture. Get out of the system as much as possible now while you can. Don't rely on the system more than you have to. Gold and silver are going to be important. Maybe some Bitcoin, independent private cryptocurrencies, if you will. Independent digital transfer systems where non-local payments are required. So if you're going to have to transfer money, you're going to have to interface with the system somehow, but limit it and control how you do it as much as you can. Go local for everything else. Stay out of the control system, stay out of the nexus of the system, which is enforced on the boundaries. Whenever you cross a boundary from a bank to a bank, a financial boundary, or a jurisdiction, meaning you're going outside your city, your state, that's where the control is put into place. So go local as much as you can, and that gives you more individual freedom. But that's true now. That will always be true. That will always be true. That's why in the US we have a federated system in which a lot of laws, according to the Constitution, are supposed to be set up locally and at the state level, because it allows more freedom of choice. It allows more control. It allows more independence. It allows more, the individual to decide, or even small communities decide what they want to do. And also cure is to get very politically active and make your voice heard. You have got to get out there and say something. You can't just watch my video. You can't just buy some gold and silver. You can't just, whatever you're going to do, buy some food and go sit in your hidey hole in your corner. This new system, they got a project for it. You can't get out of it by going and hiding in a corner or hiding in the woods. It's global. You can't, there's no place you can go. Like we came to the US to get away from the British and their control system. Westward expansion, that whole thing, Constitution, Revolutionary War. There ain't no place to go unless you got a spaceship and you're going to go explore. How many of those can afford that? So you're going to have to voice your opinion in this system or ultimately be controlled by it. There's no other way, period. And not everybody has to do it, but we have to have a very strong minority willing to do this. And not only in the US, but everywhere across the world. Here's some references for you. Just have 3 for you today. It's just Project Orum website, Unit Foundation website, and the BIS's overall project website for all these digital projects. I'll just take a screenshot of that, and then I'm gonna come off camera and talk to you for just a moment. As far as cures go, let's get to that real quick. Let's present one cure that I'm involved with, and then I'll sum all this up for you guys and kind of summarize the CBDC series, the last 2 videos. So we're involved with Citizens for Sound Money for implementing sound money at the state level. It's reiterating the Constitution that says gold is money. And right now we're working primarily in Florida, but in 4 other states. Texas will come in the next legislative session, and several other states we're working on now. New Hampshire, South Carolina, I believe, and a couple others. And those efforts cost a lot of money. But what we're trying to do is reaffirm the Constitution in each state, saying, you know, we could sit there and fight the CBDC system, but at the state level, what we can do is say gold is money, and that's what we're doing. But we're also building an infrastructure where there will be sound storage, there will be audit, there will be security, there'll be a digital transfer system, or you could do manual. You don't have to do digital. It's got both layers. So if you need to send some money to someone else based on gold, you can do it, you know, in another jurisdiction, or you can just use your gold. It's money either way. So if you don't trust digital systems, fine, just use gold if you want. But there's a digital layer which allows e-commerce and allows, you to order stuff like that. We're doing that primarily in Florida, but other places. But we need money. It's about $20,000 a month to have lobbying and activism and talk to people. Right now in the state of Florida, there are 4 bills, 2 in the House, 2 in the Senate. Those are now been assigned to committees. They'll go through committees that may recommend the wording changes and do all their stuff before it goes to vote. We believe that we have in Florida the support from the Senate and enough House members to get this passed. We believe we probably have support of governor's office. We've had conversations. Daniel's done the lion's share of the effort in lobbying, Jim, and I've done a lot of the social media communication side. And you can see here, Daniel over here on the left with the Speaker of the House, Paul Renner, in the center, and another individual in the House as well. And legislative dinner, we've been pounding the pavement, in other words, in Florida. There's 5 states that recognize gold as money, not just taking the sales taxes off, but recognize it officially in their action, their law action as money. Florida would be the 5th state in the union and the biggest by far. And we're really close to getting this pushed through, we believe, but we need money to do it. So if you guys donate $250, the first 20 people that do that will get 1 ounce coin from Silverback Precious Metals, courtesy of me. I'm donating that. The first 10 people, 500 or more, we've had some people at each level already. I think there's a few spots available. We'll get one of these bars. A 5-ounce bar could either be the one with the eagle on it, or there's 3 other designs. We'll get you a 5-ounce bar. That's my donation to the cause. I'm paying for this. If you go here and donate at one of those levels, if you can't donate at 250 and 500, but you still want to donate, whatever amount, even if it's $10, you can do that. This is a way for you to get active, put some money into this so that we can try to get gold as money again in Florida. And I think if Florida hits, it's such a big state, it's going to cause a rash of other states to do it. And there are other groups working in other states. So right now, about 20 or 25 states have people actively trying to implement, to get into place legislation, to get it voted on for gold as money. And if we're talking about how to stay out of that central bank digital currency system I talked about, and all of the potential issues for privacy and freedom and liberty and all those things, this is one way to do it. And this is one way you can do it from your couch. That's activism by putting a little bit of money behind it to help us fund this in Florida and then all these other states, so that residents of these states have some protection from this system and can transact in any system they want. They can participate in central bank digital currencies. They can participate otherwise. And it'll be legal to do so. And using our federalist system at the state level to be able to recognize gold as per the Constitution at the state level, that yes, it is money. And to also build other infrastructure, make sure it's safe, it's audited, there's security around transactions, there's an electronic form of it that's backed 1-to-1 for gold, that's audited, all that kind of stuff, that you can send money across, over distance and not have to jingle, have, gold in your pocket. So we think we've got a good model there. We're working on that. Hopefully soon this will be passed as law in Florida and signed off by the governor. And then we can do other states. And this is important. This is one cure. The other cures, like I said, are educate yourself, be active, talk to people, drive to your state legislature, House and Senate, and talk to people, knock on doors. Being in person has a huge effect. But if you can't do that, emails, letters, all that kind of stuff, do all of that stuff. You've got to get involved at some level if you don't want to deal with what I just talked about, which is coming. And it's a lot closer than a lot of you people believe. It is a lot closer than a lot of you people actually believe. Trust me. It's almost here. They don't have to perfect this or that to get it in place. All those projects I showed you are to get it in place right now with the existing system. And then over the next 10 to 20 years to build the final stage, which is the nasty one. But even if they get this stage in place right now, it's going to take away a lot of your freedom, your privacy, your choice. It's going to affect currencies in a way that will probably devalue your labor, probably take some of your savings. I've talked about all these things with the previous, IMF papers and Basel, all that stuff. I've talked about all that. This system is putting all of that into place right now. They're testing it right now. And I showed you in the last video how the Fed is involved. Their name is on some of these projects. And other central banks across the world are involved. It's going now, right now. And you don't have a lot of time. You gotta stand up and say no. You got to make your voice heard. You can donate to us, and we could do it by proxy and help you. But we need you guys to start making phone calls. If you guys are making phone calls and writing letters and going to your state representatives and senators and talking to them, when we approach them from a legislative perspective, it helps move things forward. If you tell them what you want, they're elected. They will listen. It works. I've seen it with my own eyeballs. It works. But you got to get out there. But the first thing, educate yourself. And these two videos on central bank digital currencies tell you what the system is. In my opinion, at the very end of this video, what it eventually will be and what the purposes are. Now, that's my opinion. You should do your own research before you do anything. Before you donate or buy gold or do anything, do your own research. We do not offer financial legal advice. I'm going to put this disclaimer up on screen. I'm not here to offer financial legal advice. Do your own due diligence. Consult a financial advisor or legal professional before making any personal investment or legal decisions, please. But man, based upon the data, and it's public now, and we've been covering it the last few years as it's come out, and now we've covered the final system. I think you can see what this is, and I think you can see what the dangers are. And man, if this does not wake you up to do something, there ain't nothing going to wake you up. There's nothing I can do or say that's going to wake you up. There's nothing I can do or say that's going to make you fight for freedom. We have a saying in Texas, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It's up to you guys. Now, I've led you to the water. It's up to you to do something about it. Do something about it. Anything doesn't matter. And don't get bogged down in people that don't see it. It's okay. Love them for who they are and where they are. Move to the people that do. Build your networks. Do what you can. And don't go in your hidey holes with your hoard of gold and your weapons and your beans and whatever and think, I'm going to be okay. No, you won't. Because once they get the system into place, unless you have a spaceship to go to another galaxy with a habitable planet, you can't get out of it. I don't care where you are. Because it's going to rule every transaction, every flow of goods, every city, every state, every politician, every financial professional in the world at the same time. And give it another 20 years, and it's going to be so locked down, you will never get out of it. But the next year is critical. The next year is critical to slowing this down enough, to building alternatives, and telling and making the politicals aware. Some of them are not even aware. Some of them have woken up, some of them haven't. We got to talk to people like, oh my God, I didn't realize. It's like, well, yeah. To getting people to understand this so they can say, wait, let's slow this down and have a public debate. It would be different if all of us in the public sat down and decided this is what we want. It's not what's happening. They're building it top down. They're putting you in there whether you want it or not. And half the people are asleep, don't even know what the hell's going on. They're not talking about this in mainstream financial media. You're never going to hear this. Never. There's no town halls going on. Let's talk about implementing the U.S. version of the central bank. No. The Fed is saying they're not doing blockchain technology and we're not sure about central bank. BS, they're involved in the projects. You saw it on the last video. Their name was all over one of these projects. Enbridge, I believe it was. Come on. Don't buy that. This isn't a democratic discussion. This is being shoved down your throat with a lead pipe. And you got to decide if that's right for you or not. But I think the people should decide. That's what our Constitution says. As far as I know, as of this date, December 21st, 2023, at 1 p.m. Central Time, I'm recording this. We still have a Constitution, so I'm not outside the law and talking about it, right? How much longer is that going to be in place? Think about it. It's moving fast, man. I say the quickening all the time after the Highlander movies. We're in the quickening phase. I kept saying we're at the 11th hour. Now we're at the 11th hour in the 50th minute. And then maybe a few months from now, we're at the 59th minute. That's how fast this thing goes, baby. You don't got any time. And if you add to the fact that 2024 is probably going to be the most turbulent financial year since the Lehman crisis, and probably more so, think about all the distractions that's going to create. I mean, you got to jump now. That's my thought. It's what I'm doing for myself. Make your own decision, do your research. But I think you can see here what this is. All right, stepping down off my high horse and off my pedestal. But anyway, that is the second part of the series. Now, next Thursday, we're going to go over sort of a year-end in review, a light one. I'm not going to go over everything. It's not going to be like a chronology or an anthology. But we're going to lightly touch on what happened this year, my expectations for next year. I did have a conversation with some other luminary people in the gold, silver space, which, and they have some great thoughts and do other research that I don't, that I think that we're going to talk about some of their, I won't name them, but we're going to talk about theirs. And it's going to be a really cool preview for what's going to go in 2024. Don't miss that one. Okay, that'll be the one after Christmas. And I will have a Tuesday video after Christmas next week too, a weekly market wrap. It'll be an abbreviated one. We're not going to have a lot of financial days, the holidays, but I'll do a real quickie. And then that's next Tuesday. And then next Thursday, a week from today, we're going to do sort of my quickie review and my predictions for next year. And then when we get into 2024, I'll come back and talk about this stuff in more detail. But for right now, these two videos were critical. Just two video series that gives you the infrastructure, stage 1, stage 2, and the end game. Just from my viewpoint, my opinion, in my opinion, all of this stuff. But it's to educate you and prepare you for 2024. And I've been doing a lot more preparatory either videos or segments. We're going to do more of that in 2024. Not only financial preparedness, but other types of preparedness. Sometimes it's educational preparedness or food preparedness, water preparedness, whatever kind of preparedness we need to do. Mental and spiritual preparedness, we'll talk about that too. And we'll get into that. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Man, we're 52 minutes on this bad boy. It was a long one, but it needed to be done. It needed to be done. I think now we have the cogs, the pieces in place of what the system will be. I think we got a good idea what it's going to end up being. We've got some rough timelines. And man, that just leads us into 2024. I'm telling you, 2024 is going to be both a turbulent and a prophetic and a profound year in 1,000 different ways. You watch. Man, it's going to rock your socks. But don't get distracted from not only preparing, but being active in saying, this is not what I want. You have a voice in this country for the Constitution. It's not only a voting voice, it's a real voice. Use your voice, please. All right, till next time, this is Rob Kientz with goldsilverpros.com.